finish. I want to get this on the record, Mr. Pyle, because you have culpability here. Mr. Egan certainly is involved with this. There's a lot to be gained by the county at the expense of Menachie, and I'd just like to read 3 short paragraphs, and then I'll give you a handout.
You can give the handout to the clerk to the record. It will be part of the record.
Okay.
Go ahead, you got a minute.
At no time in the last decade did Menachie Logging employ 37 people. The underwriter, Superior, was paid $12,657 to tell a very clever story. I have a copy of that report. On December 26, 2013, the SCED stated that the public benefit translated to 13 full, not 37, but 13 full-time employees. In September of 2014, these 13 people were independent contractors. They weren't employees. No such public benefit was satisfied, and that's one of the requirements to get you off the hook with the state of having to pay it back. Mr. Norwood claims that in January 2015, the Lassen County CDBG program coordinator somehow declared the county had adequately documented the national objective. There's no documentation to that, and I'm hoping that somehow this letter that you weren't given will support that. Lassen County receives CDBG funds from the state of California and relies totally on the honesty and accuracy of all reporting. $350,000 was transferred from Fund 112, Budget Unit 941, Account 2012400 to make the disbursements under the Menachie Logging loan. The terms stated under the Lassen County Microenterprise Guidelines, which I have a copy of, for CDBG loans have not been met. A state audit will confirm this. Now you can have the handout.
Thank you for your comment.
Richard, where's the equipment for?
The equipment that we have taken position on is in our road driving list.
It's on our property.
Yes.
At the county yard in Weston.
And it was driven there. Something.
What kind of equipment is it?
Do you have any questions?
I just have a quick question, yeah. In light of what Eileen just said, it seems like that there ought to be financials that show whether or not there were 37 employees or not.
I think that would be pretty easy to document.
That would be pretty easy to document as compared to if they're independent contractors, then their tax situation would be different. So that ought to show up readily in the paperwork. And maybe Jenna knows the answer to that.
You documented their payroll records and stuff?
Yes. So the payroll was documented at the beginning of the project, and at the end, we have to do a before and after picture. I took a payroll summary and also their DEC-9, which is a report that's submitted to the state of California on wages paid. And that is, thank you, and that is documented in the file. I cannot release that information because obviously it has confidential income information of each employee. We then reported to the state of California based off of their definition of what a full-time employee is. So even though Menachie Logging had 37 employees, it didn't mean that all 37 employees qualified as a CDBG full-time employee. So there is less that we documented, but that was also discussed with the state and they were aware of that. So the remaining employees were not counted for that process.
So,
but all were verified income qualified.
So the money you're saying that went to the state, let's say for payroll taxes, was that a summary number or was broken down by
each individual?
Each individual.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank that. If there's not any more questions by the board at that, I think we've spent enough time on this. We well documented to the public. We will move on to the next item. C3.
H3.
Grants and loans.
Again, I wish Mr. Anderson was here to be with us today.
No side conversations, please.
So you've got a report in your packet from Mr. Anderson that hopefully you've all read. As I've said for many years, I think these loan programs are designed to fail. I've not changed that position. I think it's bad business. I don't think the county should be involved in it. are, I think we should just give the money away and forget about it so that we don't waste resources trying to collect money from people who can't repay it. And for that reason, I have asked Director Anderson to come back to the board for some discussion items to talk about how we can utilize some of the CDBG money in a beneficial way rather than just loaning money to people that almost by definition can't.
Right, and it's a very good program for like CSDs, you know.
Right, public improvements, there are, like what we're doing out at Levitt Lake, I think can be a very beneficial
How about
program.
something like the Lassen Library District? I was at the city council meeting a couple meetings ago, and they approached the city council about some CDBG funds. Their HVAC system, as well as their furnace, everything is, and they have a roof that has to be replaced. So they've got, I think it's $50,000-$60,000 on the roof and $80,000 taking care of their heating and cooling kind of things on the old building that they have that they're using. So they're looking for, the city currently can't apply because they don't have their housing element in order, so they're precluded from applying at the present time. But that doesn't help them out. So those kind of projects, would they qualify for some of this kind of money?
Without knowing the specifics of that, I can't say for sure. That doesn't sound to me like an eligible project.
It's an eligible project, but the area that it's benefiting is not eligible. Lassen County and the city of Susanville are not considered low-income areas defined by the state of California. So any type of project that we do, we will actually have to do an income survey to determine whether or not it's
Well,
eligible.
they are primarily, they only have fee support from tax assessments within the city of Susanville based on that $28, but their service area is basically the whole county. And so,
And the whole county, I want to say, is about 41% designated, and we need about 51% to be eligible.
so they wouldn't qualify. Okay. Well, they asked me that question the other day. I was at the meeting. They said, can the county help? I said, I'll try to find out.
And they did approach us also, and we have a letter to them that basically states we hope to be eligible for more funding in 2017 round, and that at that time we can look at it and see what the designations are and see if it would be eligible.
What would be Richard re-agendized
We could do that. Maybe if I could just direct your attention to 4 items on the last page of our memo that I think are things we can consider in the meantime. I favor a program where we cease engaging in the business assistance loans, like the Medici loan, and use that, the money that comes in from those, because we will continue to have money that comes in this program income, reprogram that income to the housing rehabilitation and perhaps the micro enterprise business lending, which is different from the business assistance lending. And maybe in a grant format rather than a lending format. And these are just things I want to throw out there to discuss. And if you give us direction, we can flesh these ideas out much more. The housing rehabilitation program actually, does have some benefit to people who are in a certain income category of people, where they need a roof or windows or what have you, and can really provide some help to them as opposed to loaning to businesses.
Do they have to meet the same 51% low income area?
Well, they would qualify on an individual basis rather than on a community basis. Okay, so the individual would have to meet the standards. But when we do a community project, the community has to meet that standard, which is more.
How would you differentiate between a loan or a grant?
Programmatically, we could do that a number of ways. And I guess our guidelines currently do speak to that, which they can be changed as long as they're consistent with the CDBG guidelines from the state. And in some cases, it's kind of splitting hairs, but you may make what's in effect a grant in the form of a loan that is forgivable with certain conditions in there. We don't want to loan money to somebody to put a new roof on just so they can sell their house 6 months later. So maybe we call it a loan, And if they live in it for, pick a time frame, then it's forgiven. Does that make sense? The second thing is revising the rehab and micro enterprise program guidelines to remove majority of the lending provisions and change to grants. One of my big frustrations with this lending program is that we spend a lot of resources evaluating, whether they're our resources or contracted, evaluating credit and bringing these things to a loan committee who I appreciate all the service that the loan committee members provide to the county in terms of their analysis and so on, but they're not full-time professional credit analysts. They're they're very talented people, but that's not their specialty, and I don't think frankly, I think that model is a good model for deciding who to make loans.
That gallery we had this morning analyzed.
And the business loans are not, they're complex lending analysis. They're not home loans, they're not car loans, they're not credit cards, they're complex lending. So that point is that, maybe we look at our guidelines and take out all this lending stuff in favor of grants or forgivable loans within the guidelines on a smaller basis. And the thought maybe being we give, if we have a startup business that needs $5,000 or $10,000, maybe we make that a grant, and then we don't have to deal with the follow-up paperwork and attempts at collection and so on, or underwriting to the grade level. I wouldn't recommend.
Would this be only in the county unincorporated areas, or would these function also in the incorporated part? Because the city, they kind of backed out of either because they didn't qualify or whatever. So I don't know.
That's a choice that the board can make. So the city has chosen not to engage in a lot of these programs, which they're perfectly eligible to do. We at the same time have engaged in them, and at times we've found that we've got these grants and we have no takers for loans. And so we've said, the board has invited city residents to be able to apply for them.
Well, city residents are county residents too.
I understand that, but in terms of CDBG, there's two different jurisdictions.
But CDBG did release a management memo that did state that the city residents are a portion of the county, and so we have gone through the process of getting the city residents eligible for the micro enterprise technical assistance and financial assistance programs.
60% of Aaron's people, 100% of mine, and a portion of Bob's people are city residents. So let's not forget that.
And then the last two items are really just budgetary in nature. If we decide to use that program income for one of these other projects, we'll need to transfer that money. That certainly can be taken up later when Mr. Anderson's here. In the meantime, and we're not agendized to take any action, but I have directed staff to, if they have applications for this business assistance program, to inform them that we are currently in a state of deciding whether we're going to continue this program or not, and so not have any expectations of those applications being processed quickly. I don't know if we've had any or not, but we've had. Okay, so we've got some pending, but they've all been notified that we're taking a step back and evaluating whether or not we're going to continue this program at this point.
Okay. Good, Richard?
One more thing, with this deal here, I know there was a business up in Big Valley that was going through this thing too, and they ended up getting rejected after a long period of time. But it was 2-3 years of going through this process, and the keep the extra employees and et cetera. And it's a bad deal for the business people too, because they keep on extra help and that they don't necessarily need to do in hopes of getting this stuff, and it's kind of like a ferret out there.
The other thing I think we need to do when we get to these applications, we need to do something about the process that if to have an initial evaluation that's going to determine is this thing going to go anywhere or not. Instead of having to drag it on for 3 months, 6 months,
4
a year, 2 years, 4 years. Because we have one business here locally that I'm aware of that should have been notified 30 days into the process that, sorry, you're not going to be able to meet the requirements. And so they strung that person on for like the longest time waiting. And part of it was they were waiting, the staff was waiting for him to provide stuff. He was waiting for them to get back to him, so they sat there like a Mexican standoff, and everybody's got hard feelings. And you can't do that.
I appreciate that, but I will just say there are two sides to that. In most of these cases, it's not just staff
No, it's
delaying.
not. I appreciate that.
You're just
But-
collecting the
but-
information. and
But the bottom line, Mr. Egan, is the staff's got to be the grown-up in the room and say, hey, this thing isn't going to go anywhere, so we need to be able to make that determination early on and put it into what would otherwise be this long, drawn-out process that doesn't go anywhere. They're wasting our time.
And that process has changed.
Yeah, I know it has, but I appreciate the fact that.
I think you beat this down a little bit. Let's move on, everyone. Okay, we're going to go back to our marijuana discussion. And I thank Mr. Burns, you're up front with a new clean.
So, just for clarification, we are going to bring this back when Mr. Anderson's.
Correct. Correct. Shannon, thank you for your work.
Let her know.
I know since you get Mr. Chairman, members of the board. So, over the lunch hour, what I did was I went back and I made an effort to incorporate the changes that you wanted to be made. And then highlighted them in yellow. I have not printed them yet, with the thought that perhaps it might change again. Tribute to dead trees and all of that. I didn't want to have to print 20 copies and then turn around and have it be of no value to anyone other than a waste of paper. So, let's, if we can, a couple things. One is this proposed ordinance creates a Title 19 of the Lassen County Code. I looked in the county code for a place that I believe that it should logically fit, and found none. There is a title entitled zoning. This is not a zoning ordinance. This is an ordinance related to the abatement of public nuisance. And consequently, my conclusion was that we created Title 19. And that's why you see what in the previous drafts were, I had X, Chapter X or Title X of the Lassen County Code. I have since followed the convention throughout this ordinance of, instead of it being X, because I didn't know what it was going to be, numbering it Title 19 and the various sections. So that's what the numbering relates to. So what I did was I went through and highlighted the paragraphs that have been changed since your draft hit your agenda packet. This first paragraph G in the findings and purpose portion of the ordinance relates to what we discussed this morning. Cultivation of any amount of marijuana at locations or premises within 1,000 feet of existing schools, public parks, and licensed daycare facilities creates unique risks that the marijuana plants may be observed by. And basically, we created the premise that it was existing at the time as consistent with what you had wanted. And that was that first portion. And then into paragraph
Turn
L.
that bank off so it'd be a little bit easier to see it.
I'm sorry, say again?
I was going to just turn that bank off so it makes it
Okay.
a little bit easier.
And so,
No, that's okay, Jim. That bank there is fine.
paragraph L is important. I've made some changes to that over the course of the lunch hour unsolicited. What I did was further expound on the urgency associated with adoption of an ordinance. And the reason I am doing that is because, as I previously stated, I'm proposing this as an urgency ordinance within the meaning of Government Code Section 25123, and more specifically that it is essentially adoptable after one introduction and reading and vote, if you will, if approved by 4/5. If you find that the immediate peace, safety, and health of the residents of Lassen County are affected. If you don't,
That's the law, and consequently, that's the manner in which it's being proposed. And the reason I'm suggesting that is because growing season is upon us. We've had a number of meetings. We've tried to be on the front end of this as much as we can and also be very deliberate about what we've done. But nevertheless, we're still here in April, at the end of April, and we're looking to hopefully accomplish something here today. Now, I'll tell you that I think it was Yuba County or Yolo County recently, one of the Y counties, I don't know which one, recently adopted an ordinance which related to the cultivation of marijuana. I keep wanting to call it medical marijuana, but it's really a marijuana cultivation ordinance. And they were immediately challenged. They passed it, they adopted it as an urgency ordinance, and they were challenged based solely on the issue of it being an urgency or not. And consequently, that is why you saw me flesh out the findings portion associated with, and that's why I had been waiting for some communication back and received that, and that's why I spent a little extra time.
Can you read that, Bob?
Oh, you bet. I'm sorry if that's so small. I'm a little reluctant to.
Can you enlarge the, is there a way to make it like 150% instead of?
Oh, yes.
So that would make it
Yes.
maybe even, yeah, look.
How's that?
There we go.
How's
There we go.
that? Oh, check it out. Is that better?
Almost.
Okay. Paying attention? Here, let me fix that. Let me fix that. How's that?
No.
Sorry, I couldn't.
Thanks, Paul.
You better.
Oh, and I'm all the way at the end. Okay, let's get
Yeah,
back
now
to
you
it.
really messed yourself.
Now I'll get back to it. What were we at, about 190%? There we go. So let's scroll back down to it. That was the first portion. Here's the second portion. Basically, that you'd received substantial testimony over the course of several months related to the impacts upon the peace, health, and safety of the residents of Lassen County as a result of the indoor and outdoor cultivation of marijuana. Specifically, the board finds and declares that Lassen County does not currently have in place an ordinance which attempts to mitigate these impacts. As a result of not having such an ordinance, Lassen County is an attractive place for marijuana growers to come and grow in large quantities unregulated. It has already been established by the Lassen County Board of Supervisors by substantial evidence that large marijuana grows are occurring in some of Lassen County's densely populated communities. Even in some of the less populated areas of Lassen County, the Board of Supervisors received substantial testimony that marijuana grows are impacting the communities in which they occur. These impacts include, but are not limited to, malodorous smell, damage to the water supply, invitation to criminal activity, attractive nuisance to children, exposure to dangerous pesticides at a minimum. Because of the impacts associated with these grows and the other impacts supported by substantial testimony, the proposition that the marijuana growing season is about to start, the board finds and declares that urgent action is necessary within the meaning of Government Code Section 25123, paren D, to immediately preserve the peace, health, and safety of its residents. That is, I think, about as explicit a statement as to the need for an urgency ordinance as I might be able to draft. Gentlemen. So, that's the second change or modification to what you saw in your packet. That occurred over the lunch hour. The next was the definition of what an established marijuana grow is, and that'll become relevant as we get to a later provision of the conditions of cultivation.
And that's a new definition
Yes.
that you added because you
Yes.
had the request from Mr. Alba?
Yes, it is. And it specifically says an established marijuana grow means a plot of land which has actually been utilized for the outdoor cultivation of marijuana within the last full growing season. And I go on to define full growing season means April 15 through and including November 15 of any calendar year. All right? So keep that in mind. Yes, sir.
Does that mean it has to grow for that full period, or does that mean it could be any part of that period?
Your outdoor cultivation growth period.
An outdoor, okay, let me read this.
It could be any part of that.
Yes.
Part of that, yeah.
Yes.
So if you harvested in October, you would still
Within
qualify.
is the operative word to answer your question. Within.
Okay.
When do you usually
We had
harvest?
we had a big discussion about that this morning, or that came up in the discussion, so this is.
You know, I picked the outside dates, is what I did. April 15th, I mean, it's the 21st. I think there's still a better than even chance we're going to have a good freeze before, what, Memorial Day.
Usually
I think in most years we do.
First freeze is when
Only if
you
you
want to
plant
harvest.
something.
Exactly. Or cut your own off or whatever. Well, that makes it grand, sorry.
That's never known.
And then, you know, November 15th, yeah, I've got a brown thumb, so I mean, I picked these dates fairly, I don't want to say arbitrarily because that has some legal significance, but again, April 15 through November 15, I think fairly bounds what could be considered a full growing season. But please, just keep that definition in mind as we get to another set of changes that occur down the road here. Conditions for cultivation. A, B are precisely the same as were in your packet. C is changed, not in that portion as shown there, but C1. Let's get to C1 because that's really where we had some pretty good discussion this morning. We were talking about premises less than 1 acre in size. And maybe some of this is redundant, but I wanted to make certain it was clear in the ordinance what precisely we were talking about. Let me make that a little bit bigger, because... Is that better? Each person who resides in premises of less than 1 acre in size may grow no more than 12 marijuana plants, no more than 6 of which may be grown outdoors. Period. There shall be no case in which the total number of marijuana plants being grown on premises of less than 1 acre exceeds 12 in number. And then we have the setback requirements. All marijuana being cultivated outdoors on premises of less than 1 acre in size shall be set back from all property lines at least 20 feet and shall also be set back from all existing dwellings at least 50 feet, excepting therefrom dwellings located upon the premises where the marijuana is being cultivated. Such setback distance shall be measured in a straight line from the from the property line or dwelling to any fence required to be constructed to enclose an outdoor marijuana grow pursuant to this title. All right.
So the grow zone within the parcel will be determined by those various impacts of setbacks.
By the setbacks. Yes, sir.
It could be a postage stamp on some lots.
You know, it depends on the size of the lot. It depends on the shape of the lot. I suppose it's possible that you have a long, thin, rectangular-shaped lot that it's plausible no grow could occur because nowhere on that parcel are you more than, what, 20... there's more than 20 feet off the property line.
If you have a 40-foot wide lot, 20-foot setback, you're
done.
You're done. Yeah.
I mean that's really the exception.
Mm-hmm.
Well, at least it's an open door for some growth.
It is. It's a change certainly from what we had discussed last week. Aaron always has a question.
I'm still going to push for indoor grows. I mean, we're going to have enough enforcement issues going with this, and it's just going to be a neighbor that's going to be calling up the sheriff once, twice a year, whatever, going to bring out his tape measure to measure it to get on the property, and I think this is going to make it.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. May I ask you, Mr. Supervisor, to reserve your remarks until the conclusion of the review of the changes and save them all up? Because I'm betting there's going to be more than one.
Okay.
You gotta can't use it.
Not to derail you.
Write them
You know.
down, Aaron.
Go ahead, Sherry.
So that's C1. I hope I effectively encapsulated what your direction was this morning.
Yes.
Okay. C2 does not. It's not changed. And so consequently I didn't do any highlighting. That's the same as was in your draft. C3, there is a change. I went up to 41 acres in size from 40.
Okay.
All right? And then I think I caught that convention throughout the rest of the paragraph.
You did change the first sentence in each of the...
Yeah.
Well, there towards the, you got the one down there that says 40,
Yeah.
You got that 41, so there's...
When I spell it out in words and then number it also.
But do you have that, not for their own personal consumption? They only keep 12.
I worded it differently. Let's go back. Let's go through it. Let's make sure we understand it.
But you don't have that.
Wait. We get to that. we get to that. And that's specifically covered, the issue that was addressed about
Okay.
12 plants, 12 plants per, that was specifically addressed at the end, and I'll show you what I mean. But I did take out some of the language relating to, for their own personal consumption, or for a primary, or excuse me, patient of a primary caregiver.
Got to keep an eye on you.
No. So that was the change in number 3 that you had asked me to effect, and then change in number 4 is similar. Also the change in number 3. And so, let's get to number 5. Outdoor cultivation of marijuana on premises of any size. This was included in your packet previously, but it's been worded differently. I struggled with this one on how to effectively deal with this. We're talking about fencing. You've asked for a 7-foot fence. I wrote 7-foot fence of substantial construction. If I leave it at 7-foot fence, what's that going to mean? Somebody's going to erect a visqueen wall, 7 foot tall? I don't think that's what you intend. And so I went on further to propose what constitutes substantial construction. And I also have a problem with this at the end, and I'll tell you what that is. Substantial construction for this purpose means a fence constructed by 4-by-4-inch wood posts, spaced no further than 10 feet apart, with 2-by-4-inch wood rails, no fewer than 3 each between posts, with 1-by-6-inch wood pickets that have no gap between them. That's the equivalent of a wood picket fence, a tall wood picket fence. Substantial construction of a fence for this purpose also means the erection of a 7-foot chain link fence, which includes side-obscuring slats. We've all seen those. The problem is we heard from Maureen Anderson last week that I think within the last year or so, maybe Galen can confirm, that the size of a fence that can be constructed without permit has now been increased to 7 foot. From 6 foot to 7 foot within, what, the last year or so?
With the last cycle.
Okay. Problem is they don't sell pickets in 7-foot length. And I don't think chain link fences at 7 foot are, I'm not in the chain link business, but my guess is I'm going to say it's more than a guess because I did reach out to a lumber company before I proposed this chain. They don't sell 7-foot pickets. All right? They don't. No, you have to buy a length of 1-by-12 cedar, dog-ear it yourself, and then cut it to whatever length you want. So that's how you would have to go about constructing each picket. Now, you could do that if you want. Or, I think as someone else perhaps suggested, you could...
What I suggested to you when you mentioned that is you put a foot base on the fence and you put your 6-foot pickets on top of that, so you have a cumulative of 7 feet. But
that's doable.
Yeah, I mean, you create a base to it, and that's done all the time.
You create a Berlin Wall. Sorry. I apologize for my editorializing. Anyway, so I've written a definition that I think respects what you've wanted. Likewise, chain link fences, I did not have an opportunity to research that issue. I'm assuming they could construct one of 7 foot in height.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Including the reservoir.
Shoot, a lot of...
That's the electric perimeter you're forgetting.
If you go look at a lot of the playgrounds, I mean, you can go down to like the ball fields where they have to create...
the backstop.
The backstops and stuff like that.
Keep the foul balls from going into the crowd.
Exactly. They're 10, 12. They could be as tall as you need it.
Fair enough. That was my concern about the fencing component related to the outdoor cultivation was an effective definition that would basically be certain enough that we could say that's in compliance and that's not. And that's the reason that was
You're happy with that?
Yeah. It works for me.
Works for me.
Number 6, maximum number of plants per patient. Here you go, Mr. Chairman. Notwithstanding the allowances made above for the total number of marijuana plants to be grown on a particular premises, depending on the size thereof, there shall be no case in which the total number of marijuana plants being grown for an individual qualified patient exceeds 12 in number, regardless of whether the marijuana plants are being grown by the patient, him or herself, or by a properly designated caregiver for said patient.
Thank you.
Does that effectively deal with your
I think it does.
concern? Oh, I believe it does.
I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but
No, it's plain language is what it is, and it should be plain language, and I think that's the approach we've been taking all along.
We've
We
been
wanted this
trying
to
to
be
keep it.
fairly bright line, fairly straightforward to understand, not complicated, and not a whole quagmire of rules that the average person who wanted to maybe know if they were in compliance or not could fairly easily navigate their way through.
okay, is that all of them?
No?
No? What else you
Oh, let's just start.
got? You bet.
E, let's talk, I'm sorry, F. The outdoor cultivation of marijuana in any amount or quantity upon any premises located within 1,000 feet of an existing school, licensed daycare provider, or public park, hereby declared to be unlawful and a public nuisance that may be abated in accordance with this title. Distance measured in a straight line from the boundaries upon which the marijuana is being cultivated, the boundary lines of the premises on which the school, licensed daycare provider, or public park is located. Now, here's the interesting part, and this is the one that got some amendment recently. This provision does not apply, and no abatement shall occur when such school, public park, or licensed daycare is created within the 1,000-foot exclusion zone subsequent to an established marijuana grow as defined in this title. A school and licensed daycare provider is created on the date it is licensed by the state of California for operation at that address. A public park is created on the date the Lassen County Board of Supervisors dedicates public land for a public park at that location. The burden of proving the preexistence, well, this should be an established marijuana growing location in proximity to a licensed daycare provider, school, or public park is upon the owner or legal resident of the premises upon which the marijuana is being cultivated. That hasn't changed. And so let's go back to the definition of what constitutes an established marijuana grow, because that's what that refers back to. And that refers to a marijuana grow having actually been conducted outside during the last within the last full growing season.
Can you back up for a minute?
Yes, sir.
Where you make the reference, it says, a public park is created on the date the Lassen County Board of Supervisors dedicate public land. I think what you should say, that's true, the board can do that, but there are entities that have recreation or park authorities, like community services districts. So I think you might want to say Board of Supervisors or other empowered local government entities, because like the Hurlong PUD.
So you're saying you're not the only one that can create a park?
No, yeah, no, LAFCO, when LAFCO considers, like we've been entertaining with the Hurlong PUD, and with one of the powers that they would be given us service-wise, there's like a menu you can choose from. And the law actually has a big menu, and you can create districts that can be all or part of what those items are. And in order for them to maintain, like say, that parkway coming down that the county deeded over to them, they had to have that power. So we probably have, I mean, the Clear Creek Community Service District, I think the Lester Community Service District have that power as part of their.
Clear Creek is the county park, right?
I know county, they're a county park, but the public, the community service districts, several of them, have as part of their power. Not that they're doing the Clear Creek Park because we're there, but if we weren't there, they could establish their own park. I mean, I think the Spalding community. So we probably have 6 or 8 or 10. Ben Waugh could give you the exact number, but I think you need to incorporate that power because it's more than just the board can establish a park.
Then it needs to be changed in 2 places.
Yeah,
And that was my
swimming
issue.
pool's another prime example. I mean, at the JPA,
Yeah.
Like community associations.
Milford Community Association.
So how would we propose to word that, gentlemen? A public park means an area of land designated by
A
local public agency.
any local public entity empowered so under the law, and that's LAFCO is the one that actually oversees who can and can't. The board of supervisors is automatically that's part of our inherent powers, but you have other entities that can do it. So,
Okay, well, where is my question?
you have Cowboy Joe. He created his own park. That's why we have Cowboy Joe
Public
Park.
park means an area of land designated by any local entity empowered to establish a public park?
Well, I think the way you have it written is pretty good.
Yeah, it by a local, I would say, yeah, local governmental entity.
No. Means an area
You know, if a private individual created a park, then it's
Right.
a private park, it's not a public park, and that's what we're dealing with. So it'd have to be one that would be created by some sort of a public entity.
Public park means an area of land designated by any local entity empowered to create a public park as an area to be held open for the public for recreation purposes.
Yeah,
Is that too much?
no, I would say we say local entity, say local governmental entity. Insert the word governmental. That would define it from being a private park versus a public park. I mean, fruit growers, the mill, when they were in business, you know, years ago, what is now Riverside Park, that was Fruit Growers Park. That was created by the Fruit Growers Company for their employees and their housing. It wasn't a public park, it was their own park.
Can we live with that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hearing no no's.
You've done some pagination changes with your letters, because I think you inserted one, because what is now F up there on the copy we had earlier is E. Then you have a new
Yes,
F.
because I created the provision that said the maximum number of plants per patient.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
quite good observation, quite
I
right.
was just trying to make sure I'm on the same paragraph.
You are? It's the auto pagination, not pagination, poor word choice, outlining.
Auto formatting.
Yes,
Yes.
correct. So, public park is created. Oh, of course it did. I'm going to leave it alone. Public park is created.
You need to have a word in there. On public land or a public park. Geez, we go out and watch the cracks dry up in the sidewalk, you know, after the rainstorm.
A public park is created on the date any local governmental entity empowered to create a public park dedicates public land for a public park at that location.
I just want to advise the chairman, it's almost 2:45, and at 3 o'clock, the APA for the pool is going to be convening.
Yeah, I got an appointment to get at 3 o'clock
So
too.
we need to,
Pick it up as he's saying.
Okay, so here it is. These are the changes that I think you wanted. The question is I think this is the end of the changes. Can you live with that sentence? Does that effectively?
Yeah.
A public park is created on the date any local governmental entity empowered to create a public park dedicates public land.
you need a space between dedicate and public, because you gotta,
No, it's over here.
okay, there's an extra space. in
There you are. Okay, gentlemen, I think that is. Oh, come on.
Then we beat this horse to death. Jim.
Yeah, so if someone lives in town and lives on less than an acre,
The city ordinance will prevail.
all right, so if they grow for 2 or 3 other people, other patients,
They're gonna have to take that up with the city
This,
council.
this
okay,
city,
what if it happens in the county?
I'm sorry, say the question again, then assuming it's in the
If a
county.
person right now is growing for 3 or 4 other people,
Correct.
Caregiver.
and they've got, well, that might be kind of loose in today's
Yeah, of course.
community.
It's certainly not. what
Okay, let's say
you
that
as
they're
a
in the county,
physician-
not in the city, but they're currently growing for 3 or 4 other people.
If they live on a
And they
premises less than an acre, the max they can grow is 12 plants. And
So they
only
cannot
6
grow, they cannot grow them for other people.
Well, they can grow for
Up
other
to 12
people,
plants.
but maximum of 12 plants total, only 6 of which may be outside.
So if they want to use the 12 they would otherwise grow for themselves and use it as to make available to someone that they're a caregiver for, they can do that. They would not be precluded.
Would have to come out of their 12
They
plant
come out of their
stash.
Well, so
Total.
if they're growing 12 plants, if they're growing the max they can pursuant to this proposed ordinance, let me put it a different way. If they want to grow for 4 people, maybe one's themselves and 3, people they're growing for, they could grow 3 plants each, including themselves. They could grow, 4 plants, 4 plants, 2 plants, 2 plants. They could break it out how they want, but they're still capped at 12.
We had
Okay.
a real example given to us today at the podium this morning. Mr. Davis is sitting in the audience, and because he lives next to the Clear Creek Park, he's precluded from doing any growing. But Sharon, who doesn't live that close to the park, by giving her the ability to do 6 plants outdoors, so she's planning on doing 6 plants outdoors, she can. She's already been informed by Mr. Davis that 3 of the 6 plants are going to be his plants. So that's a way where you could have people, caregivers. She becomes his caregiver and can share the crop that she grows on hers.
Okay, one last point then. So it says 12 plants per person if there's 4 people living in a house.
Yeah, but, and that's kind of,
That's going to be tough because they're going to have to share 12 plants because the maximum that parcel can have is 12 plants.
and it does further say in the very same paragraph related to
Okay,
parcels
so
of
it
less
is a
than that
maximum
size.
of 12.
It's capped in the number of plants regardless of the number of people.
All right.
Did I answer your question, sir?
Yeah, I just want to be clear.
Yes, sir. And so, gentlemen, I know you got a 3 o'clock, but we've only been going on this since November. So I'm going to invite, I'm unhighlighting these don't do that to me. Right there.
I have a question in the back.
Okay, you're not going to change the 1,000-foot limit in
I haven't heard that from my superiors, ma'am.
the house.
I don't think anybody's in favor of
To
that.
500.
I haven't heard that from my superiors.
Okay,
ma'am.
so let me ask you a question. When my husband bought the house in Levitt Lake, that was in 1983. Okay, I've been living there ever since. There was no daycare center, there was no park, there were no houses behind me. The only thing that was there was the street that we were on. So therefore, I was there before the daycare center and that park came there. And I've been growing all these years. So can I continue to grow since you had changed it from 500 feet to 1,000 feet? Please.
Council, I would say no, you can't.
I think that's correct.
But I lived there before they were even built.
It don't matter.
Not as a felony,
Well,
but then was no Prop 215.
See, your little flaws there, you got to prove you were growing, but no. Yeah, my husband did at one time,
Well, it's
Probably a
not,
police report. Can I have that quote? That would prove that I was growing or he grew prior to those being built. You had the clause in there? Did you not? Was there not a clause in there? If you could prove that for the daycare centers, if you could prove prior you were growing before the daycare center came, I don't know that they would still have his record.
my interpretation
I
of
have
that,
it.
and I'll let council answer, but after this ordinance is passed by this board, then it starts.
What
Correct.
starts?
Correct.
The grandfather.
So if we go back to my deal on C1 now?
Yes,
We're running out of time.
sir.
Okay.
Sorry. Call me D-Rail Burns.
You did. Anyway, I still think we need to keep it indoors, guys. I mean, we already have enough enforcement issues, and this is the reason why we're here, is to avoid the outdoor drills. My personal opinion, and I think we're opening up a bigger can of worms, because now we're gonna have people going out there with tape measures and arguing about tape measures, and just keep it inside and just keep it simple.
Well,
It's already gonna be
if I can address that, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
Yes, as far as I'm concerned, I agree with Mr. Albaugh, because I think that's what we need to do. But I think given the fact that we have, the variations that are there, the reality is, the people who are going to grow the marijuana have to be responsible participants in the sandbox. And so these are going to be the new set of rules they're going to live by. And if any of them decide to abuse the fact, I mean, and there's some of them that have this attitude, now they've got this newfound status, that their status is premier over everybody else's status that had accumulated over the last 250 years in this country, and they've become predominant. That's what they're going to do, is that becomes an abusive situation, and we have the kind of problems that existed prior to this that brought this discussion about. It'll be real simple. We amend the ordinance and make no outdoor grow at all in the 1 acre. I mean,
I think that, I'm sorry to interrupt, Mr. Chairman, but that is the direction that most counties that have had a nuisance abatement ordinance in place for the last year or two, since the case law developed to give them the authority to do so, have gone.
Yeah, I'm more than willing to accommodate and support Mr. Hempel's suggestion for creating that caveat at this time. But the proviso is that if the people who are going to be functioning out there in this environment with that, if they don't take serious the responsibility they have to live within those realms, within that realm, they're going to run the risk of having that section amended and go back to the original version where no outdoor grows in 1 acre or less. I mean, that's.
I agree with you totally.
I'm willing. A lot of them have come and testified. They're very sincere. I've really appreciated the public input. There's been a huge more input from the public to shape this ordinance than any ordinance I've seen in recent memory.
This is a public ordinance.
It is, and I really appreciate that's part of the democratic process supposed to be about. And they are the ones that have come in and made that case. So it's going to be important that those who made that case to police their own to make sure that those kind of abuses don't take place. Because if they do, everything's going to be fine. Okay. And if we have the abuse, they're going to run the risk of having that section changed.
So,
debate is over.
Here's the part that I'm going to ask for an accommodation on. It's 252. I'm not going to ask for a vote based on something that we've been doing oral with a screen presentation. I'd like to ask you to take a recess, sir. I'd like to ask you to take a recess, and I want to retire to the offices of Building and Planning Services and print a bunch of copies for everybody to have in
Can we reconvene like at 4:30? So we can.
I don't care what time we reconvene, but I think we've got momentum going right now. I think we've tried to iron out all the wrinkles. I know there's a competing meeting, but I think we should strike while the iron is hot.
Well, real quick, Tom, how do you feel about the outdoor? Are you good with 6 outdoor, or are you no
6 outdoor, 6 indoor,
Yeah,
but
he's
I'm with Jim though. If we start running into problems,
If it starts
we
coming-
amend that.
Yeah, it would be real easy to amend it, and we can fix that real fast. I'm hoping that's not where it goes. And,
This is not the first reading.
well, this is
No,
a-
this is
Introducing
introduction, reading, and adoption all at once
Gotcha.
We can
as
do-
an urgency ordinance, sir.
And we can do that.
You can do that.
I can. 7 o'clock.
No, I just emailed it to myself. I mean, it's too
I don't have a problem voting on it.
How about 5 o'clock? Does that work for you?
How about you give me 10 minutes?
Yeah.
Let's do that.
Call recess right now and watch me vanish.
Go.
I will recess till. Oh, you guys have a meeting at 3.
Well, we'll be 10
It'll
minutes
be 10
late.
minutes late.
I'll
Only
text
went to
I'll
tell them what
Gary
we're
and
doing.
tell him that we'll
It's
be.
3:05. You're using your time. See you later.
3:00. Recess till 3:10. Yes, sir.
Just 2 quick comments. One, in Placer County, they tried to be lenient with their thing, and every dope grower from Sacramento moved to Placer County, and they did rescind their program. So that's a statement number 1. Number 2 is it might be worthwhile for you guys to set a date sometime in the future, I don't know, 6 months, a year from now, whatever,
See what's going on.
and re-review this and decide.
We'll know in 3 to 6 months.
Yeah, I think Jim has
We'll
to,
know
for sure.
by July what's going on.
Yeah, we're nobody in this growing season.
Well,
6 months.
Jim, at the end of the day, we had some growths that were just horrific. And all this,
Recess, even though council's not.
so,
I'll go across the street and let them know that we'll be over later.
Tony already did.
Okay.
I'm gonna go there anyway.
Because you got three votes.
That's almost 7:30.
What is it?
Who's going to vote?
And one to the chair and the remainder are in the public.
What you got? Is this it?
That's it, sir.
Can we open up before 3:10? I recessed till 3:10.
Then 3:10 it is. Why don't you take a look at that? Make sure that that accurately reflects the changes that we talked about, so you're confident that.
Well, I'm going to say this, and I know I'm going to be chastised for saying it. Let me see it, because I sat in this room. I sat in this room when the Dyer Mountain planning commission was acting on the Dyer Mountain, and the commission gave direction to staff, and Mr. Bertotti went upstairs and he put in what he wanted to put in. He came back, presented it to them. They didn't take the time to look at it. They voted on it, and then later on, they had to eat the fact. He said, well, that's what they voted on, and he got away with it. And I got to tell you, that kind of behavior by staff makes it so I want to read what's in there.
Okay,
I'm glad.
read it with your lips together.
I will. Yeah. Make sure you didn't change it to 11 from 12.
Or 112.
You know, back I tell you, that's what brings by contempt, because I've seen in my 40 years that kind of behavior by staff towards the board. They have a total disrespect for the board. You know, we're just a bunch of fools, and they do that. And so the fact is, you get one bad seed, and the rest of you guys have to pay for it. You guys are all awesome, except for that one bad seed. I know you're not it, I hope.
Peter is not in session. Right,
So you could be back in your office.
not. Any discussion?
In the lounge.
No, I'm leaving office. You can count on that.
You got a vote.
No, I got 67 more meetings and about 18 months to deal with it, so I'll be there. Don't worry about it.
You got a vote on this.
Worry about yourself, Mr. Heil.
It's a 4/5 vote,
I know.
so it's not going to pass, be on the state.
I'm staying here. I'm staying here for the next 18 months and the next 67 meetings.
It's not lost on me that there is thunder and lightning
Yeah.
outside all around us.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, it's coming
Work in the forest. You're
It's
kidding.
coming down really good right now too.
And I have to walk a half a block. to-
I convene the gods and they're mad.
Let's go.
Yeah, this was
Are you joking? Bye.
Are
Are you joking?
meeting.
Oh, okay.
Take care of the dogs outside.
Uh-oh. Okay.
Your dog's freaked out.
Are you
Thunder
joking?
and lightning.
I would go to the meeting.
Yeah, the lightning, the thunder is pretty
You know what, then,
loud.
I'm gonna go home and take care of the dogs. He'll let him in the house. I just have carpets
You're right
cleaned.
there. You did it wrong.
Oh, poor dog. Oh, that muddy. Oh, let him. You should just have the two dogs.
Yeah, that's enough. Jan can do that. Well, the black one is a
Did you ever catch me
look just
trying
like
to, not
Glory.
catch me, not poor
What's
Winchester,
the
but
boy
Did you ever
named
take
Jake?
me
And then we
trying
have
to do
Cowboy,
something
he's an
like you
Aussie
described?
Shepherd.
No.
You call
He's
me
a
on
little
that
one,
country
so.
road.
Oh, I will.
Just about
Don't worry about it, I will.
Maybe about
It's
50
like
pounds.
The other thing too, we had an ordinance on this.
Bring the meeting back to order.
May I?
Mr. Council. You got 30 seconds.
Hang on, let's get live.
Meeting three.
So, Mr. Chair, are we back in session?
Back in session.
All right, 3:10. I have prepared printed copies of the matters we were going over some moments ago in digital form, and presented those to the chair, made copies available to the public, and unless there are any questions, I offer them for your sound consideration.
What's the ordinance number on this?
2015-001.
Well, I checked the park of the person meeting.
I can tell you that if this ordinance is adopted today, it would be my intention, after its publication, which would of course be, I mean, if you adopt it as an urgency ordinance, it's effective on your signature, Mr. Chairman. If approved by 4/5 vote, but then the law also requires it to be published within 15 days thereafter. A certain amount of clerk would see to it that that occurred. But it would be my intention to provide a copy of this to the individuals and have it personally served upon individuals who perhaps have caused us to be present here today to have this discussion.
Okay, has everybody had a chance to review the important parts to them?
Mr. Chairman, I move we adopt this one.
What was the number again, Susan?
2015-001.
We have a motion, we have a second.
I'll second it.
Motion and a second. Now we'll take up discussion.
I'm still looking at
Okay,
this.
you guys look while we're in discussion. And this does require a 4/5 vote.
Now, Bob, on this here, are we gonna come back and, this is an emergency, so there won't be a second reading?
Correct. The motion would be to introduce, read, and/or waive reading and adopt. That would be the proper motion. So, no, sir, there's no second reading to an urgency ordinance.
That's what I said.
You both did, okay, thank you.
Did that answer your question, Mr. Outlaw?
Yes, you did.
You have the motion clear, Madam Clerk?
Yes, sir.
Well, no, I'm still gonna tell you guys, as far as C1, I can almost guarantee that next year at this time, we'll be back here to admit that. I mean, all these other counties, at RCRC, that's the reason why they went to indoor grows. Some counties went indoor grows, period, throughout the county, regardless of the parcel size. And, I mean,
I think it's only fair we give these people a chance. If hopefully they place their own people and
That's
someone blows it
all
for
it
them.
takes is one bad apple when it screws up.
Well, that's why we're here today. One bad apple, more,
Three bad apples, basically.
several bad apples got us through today.
Maybe even the newspaper will write something about that.
She didn't even flinch.
That
was good. She's accustomed to that.
It just popped out, I couldn't help myself.
You could hit it with the camera if you wanted.
Maybe even the newspaper will write something about this. That if it's abused, it'll be revisited really soon.
Very true.
Yeah, it'll be revisited.
Yes, we have a motion on the floor. We have a second.
We have a motion in a
We're waiting
second.
to
We're in
finish the final
discussion.
reading.
I think they're considering, so we want
We're letting them discuss it to themselves. I told you they had to keep their lips together.
I'm done.
Yeah, but I have to walk out.
Are you good?
Yep, Bob did everything he said he was gonna do. Good for him.
Pick up, Aaron.
Yeah, I think all the changes look good that we talked about, and we moved in the right direction,
I think we did.
and it's a positive step forward anyway.
It is, I don't care what anybody says.
It's not as much as I would
In
like
my
to say,
opinion, it is,
We're moving forward.
it is for sure a public document. With that, Madam Clerk, would you pull the board?
Supervisor Chapman.
Aye.
Supervisor Alba.
Aye.
Supervisor Hill.
Aye.
Supervisor Hammond.
I don't agree with it. We're gonna come
Supervisor
back.
Pyle.
Aye. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
And I would say, Mr. Chairman, that if we have to come back and revisit it, it will get tighter than this.
We can.
Oh, it
yeah.
will. It is, there's more to this. It's gonna get
Mr. Egan, did you have any?